benefits that can be attained by the internet. Now, in a world without the internet, we have the media, we have the newspaper, we have CNN. We have proven to you that this is extremely one-sided. We believe that this is not, and this is what we have in a world without an internet. However, in a world with the internet, we have the benefits of becoming prosumers, of interactiveness, of the freedom of expression, and how this benefits, which have already been proven to you. But let's look at the harms that they have portrayed in the world with internet. Number one, they said that it's a harm because the internet can be manipulated by capital. Number one, we believe that this is not possible. The governments or political parties do not have an extensive amount of capital to persuade or make everybody write every little second of their time to write every comment. We believe that this assumption is denying the fundamental characteristic of the internet, which is expansive to the range of being global. Now, going on to the point of being manipulated by capital, even if that is the case, that is already happening in your world without the internet, such as the media's newspapers. It's even exacerbated because in the media or newspapers, people who have money have easier access, and the people who don't have money can't even respond. This is a unique harm of the internet. Now, going on to the second harm that they have identified, is that the internet is bad because it doesn't voice everyone's opinion. We believe that this is just because it doesn't voice every single person's opinion doesn't make it a unique harm. And we believe that compared to the existing media outlets, it is the most extensive. It does represent the most amount of people's voices because simply the internet is cheap, it's accessible, and it's much easier than you to write an article or write a letter to the person, or like Taeyeong said, actually start a protest. Compared to these existing things, yes, the media has been successfully portraying the majority people view. Now, their issue about how it doesn't reflect the minority's view was another issue of a harm in of the internet. And before I go on, yes.
How do you say people being directly reacting to those comments of the minority very emotionally? How are you going to say that it's a healthy debate, like scrutinizing those minorities out of the debate?
Number one, like somebody said, if that form of expression is as bad as hate speech to emotionally detriment them, we believe that rational citizens know how to discern whether hate comments are rational and be persuaded by those hate comments, or we believe in the power of people to discern that. So let's get that aside. Going on to the second issue of how it doesn't really reflect the minority's views, that's why the internet is bad. Now, I don't really know what the minority's views here is, but let's assume two scenarios. Number one, when the minority view is the minority view in the political sphere, let's say, in this case, Mingeun, people who believe in Mingeun. We don't see that happening in the internet. In the internet, we see people who support Mingeun actively talking about these issues, so they're not, that harm is non-existent. But second scenario, if they meant the minority view as on the internet as in people that are pro-한나라당, again, this is not a unique harm in the internet because why is that such a harm when I guess it doesn't happen. Now let's go into the second clash where in the cases of new democracies, does internet really help the citizens raise their voice, and does it make repressive regimes respond to the voices of people who usually did not have a voice? Now let's see the function of internet here. We say yes and definitely yes. Why? In repressive regimes, the powerless did not have any avenues to open out their voice. The citizens now can openly express their dissent against repressive regimes because before there was no other avenue available. Number two, we believe yes, this does also help mass organization and lead to democracy because it is the most effective organizing tool that can reach out to the most people, which has been witnessed through the Arab Spring last year. Number three, it is an effective tool of enlightenment, especially in the case of North Korea. That is exactly the reason why the North Korean Kim Jong-il is preventing North Koreans of having access to internet. Because through the internet access, these people get to know that there's a different form of democracy. These people get to know that you are allowed your freedom, and that's exactly what they want to prevent. Why? Because once people know that they're being repressed, it will lead to mass movement. Number four, we believe that it is also informative in letting the outside world know about the repressive regime's actions, and this does lead to pressuring these people in changing, pressuring people in stating out a comment that you should not be repressive and this is wrong. That is why we are very proud to propose.
government will proceed.
The spirit of democracy that we wish to promote in our country is proportional representation of the people. And if the public opinion is formed through the ideas that are being engendered either by the major political parties or either by the majority of opinions that are already preset, it isn't the notion of democracy that the discourse happens. It is rather the majority of opinions trumping over the minority opinions without opening up the room for an open discourse. Therefore, the ideas of the ideas that euphemisms that actually came from the first speaker does not stand, because the Prime Minister of this House, the role of himself is to actually link this back to the idea of the policies being engendered and how it helps the political parties and the existing political system to engage in discourse in order to induce a change. What he did instead is to actually introduce the concept of democracy and the ideals behind it. We can never challenge the notion. Well, the reasons why there wasn't any POIs in the first part of his speech is because he started introducing ideas that are simply unchallengeable in the first place. He started mentioning the freedom of choice. He started mentioning the equality, and he somehow had this preconception in his mind that the opposition was going against the notion of equality and freedom of speech. If the freedom of speech that occurs on behalf of the people does not occur through proportional representation, and let's have a thought experiment. The internet already exists, and I know it is difficult for everyone to think of a world without internet. You are probably fed with the idea that internet is the tool in order to open up the discourse. But imagine a world without the internet for a moment. This is the debate that can only occur through the matter that is a thought experiment through which the existing system does not exist. Therefore, I have two clashes in today's debate. Firstly, about the efficacy of the internet in order to induce an open discourse, and secondly, about the public reaction. Is it actually a successful and healthy reaction to actually enact upon this when it comes to the internet and the comments that are posted on the internet? Firstly, about the efficacy. They challenged us by saying the Prime Minister has came up with the idea of it creates dialogues and it creates discourses without full justification of how qualitative that dialogue and how qualitative that freedom of speech ultimately needs to be. And obviously the notion of democracy was prevalent before the introduction of internet. And before the introduction of internet, the freedom of speech was recognized by the French Revolution and by the past revolution that have been taking place in the first place. And for you to propose ideas based upon that premise is simply wrong in the first place. First, please justify why that dialogue is healthy in the first place. We are going to prove to you why that is unhealthy. The majority of opinion is almost predetermined. It is a predetermined sets of rules when you actually look into the articles. You have 500 comments of majority actually commenting upon the support of a certain majority of political party, and only one comment on the minority. And they simply get buried. As you roll through the scroll bar and look through it, there are 500 comments, and in order to look at other comments that are posted on minority, you need to move there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1 through 7, the idea is actually predetermined by this rule. A healthy discourse that does not occur, because the majority of opinion is already fed upon the public, even if it is the case their opinion hasn't been formed yet. Therefore, it isn't the idea that influences the society. Secondly, about the efficacy of internet, going back to it, the equality does not occur when you actually trump the minority parties, and there was actually no response from the government in this idea, because in the indirect democracy, you're obviously not engendering democracy solely based upon the internet. it has to affect the existing system of indirect democracy. And when the majority party actually has the power over the minority party in order to hire the part-time commentators in order to support their own political party, it is a disproportionate representation of the existing system itself. Yes, Youngjae?
Mr. Speaker, considering the notion of democracy, we believe that a government should not judge what is a qualitative comment. We believe that there should be as many clashing ideas as possible, because we had no clashes today in this debate.
Even if the ideas that you can see for open discourse have to move like from 1 to 7 and 14, that doesn't actually occur with the internet. And I'm going to prove to you why past revolutions occurred without the internet, right? Yeah. Internet isn't the sole cause of the revolution itself. The perspectives and the mindsets of these people were predetermined, and internet was merely a tool that they utilized in order to induce the revolution. And it is a disrespect for you to, like the people who died in the French Revolution, right? Yeah. They did that without the internet, right? The predetermined sets of rules, without the predetermined sets of rules. And onto the notion of equality. It does not occur, like, right? And the capital investment occurs, like, through other means that they say. Even if it is the case that majority opinions are fed on to people by hiring commentators, it occurs through other media as well. We can see, well, but various media exist. You can actually derive checks and balances between the media, existing media that gets funded from the government, and other existing medias that exist elsewhere. And internet, even if we concede to the idea that these people and these political parties are funded, internet aggravates the situation. And if we prove to you that it aggravates the situation through forming the public opinions, we actually prevail in today's debate. And the notion of oppressive regime, as eloquently represented by Youngjae, it doesn't stand in the context of today's debate. Internet isn't the sole cause. Like I said, like the French Revolution, the Russian Revolution wasn't fueled by the internet. The mindset of these people were already set in order to induce the change. The same for the Tunisian people. And if you come up with the idea that internet is the sole cause, like Tunisian government should have Bill Gates as, right. And the shift in the system is actually a different issue. The motion says empowers democracy. We don't talk about like the French overthrowing monarchy, but rather how the system can be maintained without being recaptured by Robespierre. Therefore, that notion does not stand. Lastly, briefly about the issue of the public reaction of this issue. Like the emotional reaction, is it actually a justful discourse that is engendered? Instantaneous and without rational thought. You are actually bombarded with overflowing information that supports the majority of information without having to think about the article and the contents of the article yourself. You are actually fed up with the majority opinion itself. And that is innately problematic since the public opinion is actually swayed before even thinking about it yourself. The majority of commentators, either hired by majority parties or simply had the predetermined sets of rules before they even looked into the articles, is the idea that is against the notion. And the mad cow being refrained like that, which briefly came up, which actually proves that emotional reaction that occurred in 2008 because of the internet isn't the right reaction in the first place. The majority of opinion that the mad cow already existed was fed up on the public to actually act before rationally thinking about it themselves. And therefore, have the thought experiments in their head. The world of democracy is better without the internet.
Mr. Chair, this debate is totally predicated upon the notion and the value of what is a democracy. Prime Minister comes up here and talks about the democracy as in the ideas of freedom of expression, multilateral dialogue, and equality. Obviously, we are not an oppressive regime. We do not go against the ideas of freedom of expression. But the idea and the contention coming from the opposition side was the ideas of democracy and whether we can actually listen to all of the minority opinions and whether we can base our policies and base our national policies based upon the opinions that is represented in the parliament, that is represented in the overall society. We believe that that is a fundamental harm that goes to the overall international society and also to the national parliament itself. We brought to you the idea on side opposition and that it actually decreases the capacity for minorities to engage upon the ideas of democracy and express their own opinion. We talked to you about how there's a hell load of information upon the internet when talking about the characteristics of the internet, and the moment where the characteristic of the internet is actually expressed upon the idea that there's a lot of information and you have to have discussions based upon that information. It is a discussion and a question about what kind of information is majority and what kind of information is minority. We've already given you the problem in the internet in saying that there's a lot of political candidates and there's a lot of political parties that actually use their capital to increase the amount of advertisement, increase the amount of comments that we already see within the internet itself. So if we look into the case scenario about an internet that already has enough comments, that already has enough, like 70% actually supporting a specific political party, the actual minority people that come into the internet and try to express their minority opinions actually get dissed. That is the moment where they actually get buried within the status quo. We believe that that is the moment where discourse and discussion does not occur. And even if it actually does occur, we believe that that is the moment where the majority always rules 24/7, no matter what. We believe that that's fundamentally harmful for the overall democracy, because if we don't listen to the minority opinions, if we don't listen to these people actually expressing their opinion, that is the moment where it actually goes against the idea of representation. It goes against the idea of equality and the kind of multilateral dialogue that the Prime Minister wants to emphasize. The only case that they actually brought to you upon is the idea of empowering the powerless within the foreign regimes, within the oppressive regimes within themselves. First of all, we've already characterized the situation as in a context in where we want to empower the already existing democracies. But even if we do agree to the fact that it actually empowers these oppressive regimes, we've already told you that the kind of democracy that is formed based upon that information, the kind of opinions that's already formed based upon those ideas, is something that we don't necessarily want to progress within society. Because we don't necessarily believe that just because you have an internet, it is always controlled by the people, but it's also in situations where political regimes that want to control that society is also predicated upon that idea. They never had a response to that, which we believe that is fundamentally problematic in society. Second of all, they tried to engage our case by saying that there's already existing checks and balances, there's already people who comment against that idea. First of all, we don't necessarily believe the people, we already characterize that the political parties that have the capital to buy these commenters to begin with are the people who are the major political parties because they have the capital to begin with. So inevitably, it is only the majority parties that have these commenters itself, which is a fundamental harm going to the minority people who already have that specific minority opinion within themselves. We believe that that's fundamentally problematic. And they also never engaged upon the idea of emotional democracy, about how when specific people have 500 comments saying that we should actually go to candlelight situations and we should protest against the government. And the moment where that candlelight protest actually goes against the national parliament, actually deters traffic, actually makes a lot of people more emotional and prone to the idea that we should go against the United States of America no matter what, is the moment where that democracy is not properly represented, because it is only based upon emotions. It is only based upon the idea that you want to spread that specific idea, and that specific idea is already created by the political parties and the people who are already in the majority. We don't necessarily see further integration and further progression of the already of the minority ideas that we want to propose on side opposition. So, Mr. Speaker, this is a simple debate on how you can actually adjudicate upon whether it actually helps the ideas of democracy and representing the minority opinion, representing the majority opinion, and if that is not the case, Mr. Speaker, vote for side opposition.
Okay, we'd like to hear from the last speaker of today's debate.
The whip speaker came up to the podium. His last remarks was, "The world of democracy is better without the internet." And I think that pretty much extends their whole line. What we told you was, there are harms of the internet. We don't deny that. There are benefits of the internet. That's something that they cannot deny as well. The question is, do these harms overwhelm those benefits? Substantiate that very very logic of saying that you don't want the internet? Or is that internet dangerous for democracy? And I think we pretty much outlined a very good case to a point to show you that it makes democracy stronger, that it allows for discussion, it allows for discourse. And yes, sometimes there will be crowding out effects. Yes, sometimes minority opinions might not be reflected to the point where we think it's ideal, but nonetheless it provides a tool for everyone to speak. That's why we believe that the internet is something that does empower everyone. What did they told us? They told us basically first that there was a crowd out effect, that certain opinions are bigger than others, that some people speak more, to which we also told you that that's true, but that's not necessarily unique to the internet. We also told you that that's something unique to debate itself, that when people are rational and certain opinions like hate speech, as we said, are something that you don't want to accept and therefore it becomes a minority opinion, that is something that is justifiable. And therefore we say that's not a big problem. They also said that the second thing was there was too much information, to which you say, then should we have less information? They also said that it harms minority groups, but we told you no. Minorities who are marginalized in society, either in a democracy like us or in like Libya, they use the internet as a tool to express their opinion. We told you that the media doesn't provide minority groups the necessary opinions or reflections that they needed. But the internet does, because it's an avenue, it's a platform like this where everyone can speak. They said that, well, sometimes governments hire people to, persuade them, right? Like other people or speak of things about them. That's true. That's not necessarily, that is true, yeah. But we told you that governments can't buy, and who's been here who's ever been bought by government to speak something good for them? The majority of cases in the internet is everyone speaks for themselves, to what they believe.
You're here.
We think although some people would be bought up, we pretty much think that the internet, which is pretty much wide and accessible to everyone, we don't think that is something that you could say is a unique harm of the internet. At the end of the debate, we think we proved too much. We told you what democracy was. We told you the most important values that democracy aspired to. We told you three things. Freedom of expression, which was not possible in undemocratic regimes. We told you that democracy was also about dialogue, communicating with other people, producing productive dialogue, and also responding with government, and government responding to the citizens. We told you that equality was important, but internet empowers equality in this respect. And we told you that it provides to what we think is unique. We told you that the media doesn't... I'm getting repetitive, right? But Youngjae talked about oppressive regimes. We told you that the Arab Spring was in part sprung by the internet. We told you that the immolition picture was something that outraged people. We told you that people started to organize themselves through Twitter and sent people to meet at the Tahrir Square in Egypt to protest against the dictator. So at the end of the day, it's not really about what they believe the context is. It's that the internet context is pretty much worldwide, right? It's called WW World Wide Web. So which is why we thought it was pretty much justifiable to not limit ourselves. But in this sense, they haven't proven to us why it's so much harmful to say that we shouldn't have the internet. Thank you.